Chapter 17 describes how Lord Vishnu appears as Vamanadev. The word Vaman means 52 inches. Vaman, ek Vaman or something like this in Hindi means 52. Lord Vamanadev was considered to be a dwarf Brahmin. He was 52 inches tall, which is 4 feet 4 inches tall. Krishna was very pleased by the Paya-Brata ceremony of Aditi, and because of this he agreed to appear before her in full opulence. So he became her son. Lord Vishnu, in the form of Vamanadev, one of the 10 avatars, appeared as his son. In the verse on commentary on 8th canto, chapter 17, verse 1, it's told that Aditi was the ideal disciple or follower of her Guru Pati, her husband Kashyap Muni, acting as her guru, and she very strictly followed his instruction. And the word that describes here strictly is atandrita. Atandrita means without any laziness. He was very diligent and determined and controlled. So therefore she was successful in carrying out his orders and his instructions, and she got the result of her brata, her austerity, her tapa, her puja, her radnam. Her wish was to have the Lord come as her son and bring back her son Indra and the demigods, restore them, return their kingdom to them, which was taken over by Bali Maharaj. And Prabhupada explains that this point is relevant to all of us. Prabhupada uses Aditi and compares her to the ideal disciple in relationship to his guru, or in her case, the guru was the Guru Pati, Kashyap. Prabhupada says, for advancement in anything, especially in spiritual life, one must strictly follow the bona fide instructions of the teacher. One should have complete faith in the Guru, who helps the disciple make progress in spiritual life. As soon as the disciple thinks independently, not caring for the instructions of the spiritual master, he is a failure. Aditi was the classic example of the ideal disciple, following her guru, husband, Kashyap, and by her strict following she was successful. So the implication is that this is the cause for success in spiritual life. If a disciple wants to be successful in his sadhana bhakti, come to bhava and prema, they should strictly follow the order of the spiritual master with great faith and not act lazily or independently, have his own idea or own will, because that will not produce any success. There are some prayers that Aditi offers to Lord Vamanadev when he appears. Interesting to note also, it says when Vamanadev appeared, it describes his form, and it says that he was, in one verse it describes he was sham color. Of course the painting on the cover of the Bhagavatam shows him as being golden color. But the verse in translation, 8th canto, he was sham, he was dark color. Maybe in a later chapter. In verse 9 of chapter 17, Prabhupada is talking in relationship to Aditi's prayer. He says, when one surrenders unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, He surpasses the influence of illusory energy. Why or how? Because the Supreme Lord, who is fully wise and situated in the heart of everyone, especially in a devotee's heart, he gives one intelligence by which one is sure never to fall into illusion. And this is how Krishna actually personally helps his devotee from the vantage point inside his heart. Being situated in everyone's heart, especially his devotees, Krishna is always ready to help his devotees in adversity. Since Krishna knows everything, he knows how things are to be adjusted, and he does the needful to relieve the suffering of his devotee. Prabhupada explains that point in text 12 purport. In chapter 18, Lord Vamanadeva, the dwarf incarnation, he appeared and he entered the sacrificial arena of Maharaj Bali, who received him well and fulfilled his desire by offering him benedictions. Here it describes, in text 2, it says, Shama Vadato Jashavraja Kundala Trishola Sastri Varadambuja Puman Srivatsavaksha Balayanga Dola Sat Kirita Kanchi Gunacharu Nupura. Describes the form of Vamanadeva, says Sham Avadata, whose body is blackish and free from inebriety. This verse in 18th chapter of 8th canto, text 2, indicates that he was dark sham color, like Krishna or Vishnu. The body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, blackish in complexion, was free from any defects. His lotus face, decorated with earrings, Makara Kundala, appeared very beautiful, and Srivats was on his chest, bangles on his wrist armlets, on his arms, golden helmet, and belt on his waist, and sacred thread across his chest, and ankle bells decorating his lotus feet. This is a description of Lord Vamanadeva as he appeared in Indraloka before Bali Maharaj. How the picture of Vamanadeva on the cover, he's golden, that I can't understand. But that's there. Actually, when Vamanadeva appeared from the womb of his mother Aditi, he appeared in the form of Narayan, with 4 hands equipped with the necessary symbolic weapons. Then he immediately transformed himself into a brahmachari. So this is proof that Vamanadeva's body is not material. That's a comment on his birth. Doesn't say that. Still, when he appeared later, he was in this dark shamrang color as a young Brahmin boy. Bali welcomes him and offers him so much nice words. In chapter 19, Lord Vamanadeva begs charity from Bali Maharaj. This chapter describes how Vamanadeva asked for 3 steps of land and charity, and Bali agreed, but his guru Shukracharya forbade him to fulfill Vamadeva's request. Someone may wonder that Krishna, Lord Vishnu or Vamanadeva, he's the Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, which is told in Bhagavad Gita. He's the proprietor of all the planets and all the spiritual material world. So why should he be in want of land? Why is he begging 3 steps of land? But Lord Vamanadeva approached Bali not for his welfare, but for the welfare of his devotees. Devotees sacrifice all their personal interest to satisfy the Supreme Lord. And similarly, Krishna although having no personal interests, can do anything for the interests of his devotees. One who is full in himself has no personal interest. This is a very interesting point, the Prabhupada says. One who is full in himself has no personal interest. This is the definition of someone who can be truly unselfish, free from selfishness. Because Krishna is described that he's Aptakam and Atmaram, satisfied and blissful, pleased within himself, and he has no desire to fulfill. He's not pushed or forced or impelled by any lack or desire within himself or unfulfilled ambition or want within himself. He's satisfied and not. So he can actually be a person who's only interested in others. He can truly care for others because he has no personal interest to take or to receive or to exploit anyone. So when one is full in himself or full in Krishna consciousness, then he'll have no personal interest and he can help others be interested in them. And in verse 24, Vamanadeva is preaching, giving instructions to Balimaraj about being happy, how one should be satisfied with whatever he receives by destiny. And Vamanadeva says if one is not self-controlled, he'll never be happy, even if he owns the 3 worlds. Prabhupada talks in his purport about super senses. Very interesting idea. We have our Panch Gyanindriya, Panch Karamindriya, our 5 knowledge-acquiring senses, and our 5 working senses, which make the 10 senses, and then the mind, 11 senses. But there's something Prabhupada refers to as super senses, which is where one finds true and lasting, permanent, eternal happiness through the super senses. What are the super senses? Where can one find the super senses? Because if one contacts and starts functioning through his super senses, you'll find the real happiness, which is described in Bhagavad Gita 6:21. Sukham atyantikam yat tad buddhi hrayam atindriyam veti yatra nachayvayam stitash chalati tatvata. In the spiritually joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness and enjoys himself through transcendental senses. Established thus, one never departs from the truth. Now this experience, transcendental joy, divine bliss, Prabhupada explains that this comes through the super senses. One has to perceive happiness by the super senses. The super senses are not the senses of the material body. Every one of us is a spiritual being, an individual person. Our senses are covered by material elements. Because of ignorance, we consider the material senses that cover us to be our real senses. The real senses, the super senses, are within the material covering. Within the covering of the material senses are the spiritual senses. When the spiritual senses are uncovered, by these senses, the spiritual senses or super senses, we can be happy. satisfaction of the spiritual senses is described in the Padma Puran. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Uchate. When the super senses are engaged in devotional service of Rishikesh, then the senses are completely satisfied. Without this superior knowledge of sense gratification, one may try to satisfy his material senses, but happiness will never be possible. So here in the purport of chapter 19, verse 25, Prabhupada is speaking in very convincing and absolute terms, saying that in essence, material sense happiness and the pursuit of happiness through our material senses and body will never be successful. It will never work. It will always fall short and leave us discontent. By trying to satisfy our material senses, happiness will never be possible. Of course, we're not convinced, and we keep trying, and we keep failing, and we keep trying, and we keep failing, trying, failing. We don't learn the point. We don't realize the fact. If one is not trained to satisfy the spiritual senses, the super senses, and continues in material sense gratification, he will never obtain happiness that is eternal and blissful. Tapo divyam puchakayena sattvam shudyed yasmad brahmasokyam tvanantam. One must practice austerity so that his existential position will be purified and he will achieve unlimited, blissful life. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.